video camera? This?
I think this is the mic, yeah.
Gotta get everybody.
Can it see it? Can I see it?
You want me to move it closer? I can.
Oh no, I'm good over there. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Aaron, you're not like really in it.
I can move it more.
No.
Okay, you're good. Alright.
You're
Just
good.
get everybody, you know?
Alright, I'm still trying to connect, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you have a USB drive or do you want a flash?
Do you have a,
Did you get it?
I got it.
does anyone have a flash drive?
I got one you can't use. I think I got another one.
Oh.
No,
wait,
Yeah,
actually,
you should just
it's-
slide into it.
If I did that one, I'd be like, well, can you use it?
I think there is a decision time.
Oh, I think.
They sent out an email that's just like, please don't make us make a decision time for you. I don't think they establish an official time.
Oh.
That's a bad idea.
So basically, let's just like relax for 30 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
Let's start the debate.
No, we're trying.
Here.
Like 5 minutes ago.
Right. I'm trying to go.
Y'all seriously can't get internet because this is not recognizing it.
I have internet. I just don't have the ability to have a USB in my computer and detect anything.
Any USB or just that one?
Hmm?
Any USB or just that USB?
Just any USB. Like, my computer cannot handle a USB for some reason.
Can you forward it to me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't think this USB works.
Send it to you.
Is there a way that maybe we could just do the 1AC with you having one computer and then hope they resolve this by
I think Sam was trying to pull it up here. To be able to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What?
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
He got you.
Well,
That was so sad. Thank you so much.
This debate's getting started so
Your
serious.
face was like, no.
Wow. I imagine the building's gonna be on fire by the end of the debate. Like, boy, this is going so far.
This freaking jacket goes in.
Okay.
That's why I thought you I straight up good look though.
This is one of
I said
those.
out loud like this. It wasn't
Complicated
good.
processes.
We started at 3, the one you see with the
Yeah,
shout out to all the kids that brought down elementary school. Those are real MVPs.
Ain't nobody give me a long time this weekend, but you know, I see how it is, everybody.
I didn't get one either, but I don't need no more.
I need some. I'll take my time.
I didn't
Okay, I'll take money.
why they send me a Valentine on Valentine? Showing big and love to me, straight up to my face. Somebody no fake Valentine.
Okay, everyone good?
Yes.
They tell you this is how it always has been and how it always will be, forever living under the dome created after the last apocalypse, 100 girls, 100 boys born each year in the dome. They tell you that after the last World War, each country was able to send chosen offspring to the dome to save humanity, to save life itself. The dome is defined by an overarching solar shield, or at least that's what you've learned in school. Your teachers tell you it's not safe outside the dome. The dome protects you. The dome is where you live. It's rumored there have been people that have left the dome, but they've never come back. Work for the dome, sustain the dome, love the dome. It's maybe 10 years from now, maybe 50, maybe tomorrow, maybe yesterday. You take a hammer out of your bag, and after a quick squeeze of your hand, you smash the domestic shield. The glass shatters, the wall smashes, rips, tears. You turn to yourself. You look down at your chest. Are these breasts natural? Are these breasts yours? You pick up a shard of glass and press the sharpest corner into your chest tissue, and you cut. You cut from your breastplate to your armpit. Your breast opens, flooding, soaking, dripping with blood. You don't know what this cut will do to you, but you know that you must. This is the unnatural cut. This is the cut I welcome. This is the cut I invite. Lately, I've been having this reoccurring nightmare of mutilated breast tissue. Twice in the last month, I've woken up with scratches on my breasts. It's almost as if my own mind is mutilating my breasts in my sleep. A few months ago, I wrote in my journal, I can't touch myself because the world touches me first. The world is always cutting us, touching the skin, cutting my thought, cutting these breasts into womanhood, touching these breasts into white womanhood. When trans people take up their knife, it isn't their first cut. The imposition of gender cuts us, is cutting us on the level of the intimate. And amidst these techniques of the cut, we are trained not to cut, trained to protect the pure domestic body this flesh has been cut into. Our lives are cut out for us. Life itself is cut out for us. The condition of possibility for a domestic to solidify is the cut. Domesticity cuts the world. When Fanon tells us that this world cut in two is inhibited by two different species, Fanon is reminding us that to inhibit the world, you must be cut into a human, into a body, into a subject. This cut, a necessary condition for the creation of the domestic, is a technology. It is a technology that touches us within us. We are assembled. Power modifies us through technologies of the world. The domestic to function. Gil Peterson in 14. Humanism is predicated on a categorical separation and hierarchy of the body over technology. This ontological distinction underwrites the notion of integral human body, according to which the incorporation of technology is a fall from original wholeness. This informs any thinking of body modification is a phrase whose spacing suggests a prior existence of a body that can only be modified after the fact. The European Enlightenment's version of agency presumes a set of universalisms in defining the subject. Techniques and specific technologies can be thought of expansively as like touching itself. The body touches itself. It's a fundamental example of how living beings are constituted by their different technical capabilities. Touching is conditioned on the radical impossibility of touching oneself or the other, the elusiveness of pure unmediated presence and contact between the flesh. There is no originary touching before its necessary possibility. Life is always already inhibited by technization. Life touches itself in the world around it. Hormone therapy is a living body's capacity to reach beyond and back towards itself through techniques to exceed itself in more but unexpected ways. Statisticity is how bodies assemble themselves simultaneously as racialized and gender while preserving what makes each distinct. Social constructivist theories of race share and analysis of the body over technology, and the deontologization of race becomes only skin deep. It follows that anti-racists must share the goal of restoring a body to an unraced form to maintain the bodily integrity of humanism. Not only to be purified of technology, must be purified of race. The humanism is immiserating because it dismisses and excludes anything that is not its ideal body. Humanism interpolates minoritarian subjects into a racial melancholia. Humanist theories of race produce a regulatory ideal political agency. This version of race refers to cultural representations of people, not to people themselves. Race is technical to the extent that technicity gives race the force of its history. The history of technologizations of racialization. Race is a technology as functionality. The subject helps form location to provide information. In their 1920 paper, Austrian endocrinologists argued that higher temperatures stimulated sex hormones, leading to an earlier onset of puberty and hypersex drive in colonized populations in tropical climates. They correlated race through climate to sex and sexuality. The investment in and administration of biological life of bodies of populations by the modern state and increasingly by neoliberal modes of capitalism, assume the body down to its material and affective scales. Puberty's medical management is racialized. Black and Latino girls medically categorized by supposedly earlier puberty than white girls, echoing the colonial hypersexualization and medical interest in the genitals of the black and brown female body. And adaptive politics must begin by recognizing the historically technological entanglement of transgender and race. In 1982, Zoe Sophia taught us that every technology is a reproductive technology. Techniques determined to define what is reproduced, what is reproduction, what is life itself. Imperial Western modernity created the United States, a new world, to reproduce a certain way of living and solidified manhood and womanhood as natural, pre-existing truths of the body. This assumed naturality of gender is why trans people are told we are cutting off what God gave us. In other words, cutting off natural reproduction. Gender comes into being with the creation of the human, of the imagined whole body of the world. When we look at the resolution, it's important to understand that it's been assembled by naturalized techniques. Climate change policy has always been about a fear of the loss of reproduction, the disruption of the home via the disruption of the natural order. This is why scientists point towards the mutation of fish to solidify the fear of a loss of reproduction to climate change, and why scientists created the ideology that black women are hypersexual and hyper-reproductive through the discourse that warmer temperature mutated black flesh away from the natural order. The sort of fear of endocrine disruption and the fear of losing biological gender traces back to the imposition of white supremacy, anti-blackness, and racialized heteronormativity. This resolution inculcates us into the domestic. A domestic climate policy naturalizes racialized borders, built from stolen land and labor to reproduce the domestic United States. Greenhouse gas emissions assemble at the level of the flesh, the ways we consume, the ways we breathe, the ways we live in white supremacist consumer capitalism. Extinction also happens intimately. Asthma, starvation, dehydration, tracing the sort of intimate operations of technology that works in and through what we understand as a body is the condition of possibility for transfiguring a world that is not this one. Gil Peterson in 14, and potential technical politics, transgender and race could be an ecological politics that does not prioritize the vertical subject of rights enforced by the Enlightenment. Transgender suggests the concrete utility of an ecological experimentation with the politics of hormones in which the molecule contributes to technical and therefore political dynamism. The political capacity of technicity allows for hormone molecule to serve as a non-human threshold between nature and culture, transgender and race, and opens up a form of politics in which neither transgender nor race is separated, requiring no resuturing through a belated intersectionality. Rather, trans and race carry with them a historically conditioned potential to retooling the body politic. A hormonal politic of transgender and race cannot attend to the questions of of access to healthcare without also tending to the racialization of black femininity through precocious puberty, the accumulation of endocrine disruptions and water supplies home to wildlife, and the humanist recourse to a natural body. The tools enter in relation with living beings. Transgender and race are assembled together, technologically mediated, and they can always be assembled differently. Restricting. Cutting emissions is not a negative action. Every cut is generative. Cutting emissions is generative of a world. A domestic space that has less greenhouse gas emissions. These cuts can be generative of renewable energy or a low carbon economy. These are natural cuts, a desire to return to an idealized natural climate equilibrium, investing in the wholeness of nature, a world without the transgender fish and the various monsters brought on by endocrine disruption. The affirmation of a domestic climate policy must not begin with a restriction that naturalizes the domestic sphere as we come to know as a nation state. Our domestic climate policy must begin with a mutilation of the body, the nation, the domestic self that is rendered both natural and whole. Thus we affirm an invitation of the unnatural cut. Welcoming the cut produces the conditions of regeneration and transfiguration. The ripping, the scarring, the violent cut of the 1AC works to rupture the protection of the domestic, the homestead, the fantasy of the whole, an integral human body, producing the conditions for a space of cyclical possibility. Hayward, innate and cripple in the starfish. I'm intrigued by the phrase, cut on my finger, I'll grow back like a starfish. Let us start with the cut. Returning to carnal logics, becoming transsexual as a welcome cut. I invite the cut that leaves sex scars and other unfulfilled wishes, so I might live differently with my gender dysphoria, the corporal acts, and affective transformation as a cut, for example, does not cure, but transfigures embodiment, risking an unsettling union. I propose that trans-abling allows cut sex or other kinds of transitions to be something other than curative. Cutting is a generative enactment of growing back. To cut off the penis and finger is not to be an amputee, but to produce the conditions of physical and cyclical regrowth. The cut is possibility. For some transsexual women, the cut is a generative effort to pull the body back in through itself in order to feel mending. The cut cuts the meat in a space of cyclical possibilities, therefore created. My cut enacts a regeneration, my bodily boundaries redrawn. My cut is not passive, its very substance is regenerative. In my ongoing materialization, the body, trans or not, is not a pure, coherent, or positive integrity. The important distinction is not a binary one between a wrong body and a right body, or wholeness, but by taking up folds in our bodies, by cutting ourselves, by creating a transformative scar of ourselves, changeability is intrinsic to the transsexual body at once, its subject, its substance, and its limit. My body is a body created out of necessity, ingenuity, and survival. What I live is a body pliant to a point, flexible within limits, constrained by language, articulation, flesh, history, and the bone. The fish that transfigure reproduction in the Potomac River serve as a reminder that we are living in an era of climate change entangled with biological determinism. We are told the family, the domestic, the homestead grants us life. The valorization of the white breast serve as a reminder of how our bodies are molded to reproduce the life of the nation state as we know it. Maybe we too can grow back like a starfish.
Okay. So what does it mean to affirm an unnatural cut?
So we think the affirmation of the unnatural cut kind of serves as a template to sort of mutilate the domestic, right? So our sort of argument is that domesticity sort of forms itself, it reproduces itself through, the various ways that we're inculcated into subjects, when we're sort of inculcated into the institutions of the world. Our sort of argument is that we can't just sort of naturalize the domestic within the topic, but rather sort of get to the root of it, sort of rupture and mutilate how the domestic forms within the topic, within the world, within our own subjectivities.
Okay, what does it look like to rupture the domestic, and why does that resolve the greenhouse gas impact that you outlined in your 1AC?
Yep, so I think there's two reasons that the 1AC is sort of a theoretical framework and praxis for how we reduce greenhouse gas emissions or restrict greenhouse gas emissions. And first is the sort of mutilation of the domestic, right? So emissions happen intimately and they sort of undergird the domestic. So, greenhouse gas emissions affect how we breathe, how we consume. And so
They're also produced by how we do.
Right, exactly. We're produced by how we live. And so, for example, we talk about sort of the affirmation of the unnatural cut sort of asks us to consider other alternative technologies to dismantle emissions, to sort of restrict emissions ourselves. The rupturing of the dome, the rupturing of the domestic is sort of an alternative possibility that we think.
What constitutes an unnatural technology, and will you defend a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions?
Yep, absolutely. We affirm a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but the difference between natural and unnatural kind of gets to the question of what we're talking about, how the topic sort of naturalizes the United States and the racialized borders of how the domestic operates. So, it's sort of natural to sort of ask for, a carbon tax or a cap and trade system to sort of, remove the externalities of emissions, but never challenges sort of the root or the heart of how domesticity or for example, the suburbs operate to require consumption, require oil, require gas to be created. So, yeah.
So why are people excluded from engaging in things that are unnatural right now?
I guess I don't know if the app is about exclusion, so I'm a little thrown off by that word.
Why don't we what is preventing us from engaging in what you're describing as unnatural right now?
Oh, because the world inculcates us to believe that, for example, cis heteronormativity is natural. For example, we think that breasts are this, for example, the breast symbolizes womanhood, and we think that's a natural association, i.e., we are born and the assignation of gender into the world naturalizes us into the category of manhood and womanhood,
I have one
capital
last
M,
question.
capital W, that sort of serve as the symbol
I have
of
one
the
last
nation.
question. What is domestic?
I mean,
Or domesticity, what is that?
domesticity is sort of the underlying formation of the nation state, the body that we believe is coherent and whole, that, the 1AC works to rupture.
I'm trying to send it out. It's just that I've been literally I've been trying to get into my email for the past 3 minutes and it's really working. Do you have internet connection?
I do, if it's,
Okay, I've saved it in speech documents. Can you send it out? Because my computer is not doing internet things now.
Maybe we should like go paper right before the end of this. If we're the
That's not
I
it.
know, you can try.
Alright, here, let me try now.
was just like, oh my god, why would you contact me? I want you to do the same. And I'm also trying to kind of leave my old job. It was like a UBO job thing.
Reply all
Things that like things I'm paying for.
woman's.
I don't know if I request the, if it just seems like there's a shroud of secrecy between here.
Is the internet here any good for streaming? The bitrate must be awful.
Come on now.
Great.
Yeah.
Like, from the American person.
YouTube kind of does
did
the
you do
buffering,
this in
so.
Dropbox already?
Mm.
It's not, his
And
isn't updating.
I am also recording on my
Yeah.
computer, so if there is
So
any
the old
drop,
copy.
I can just
Like
upload
the
whole
bar
thing.
is like literally right there. It's about to send. It's just not to. Well, this. I'm trying to send it. It's almost Sunday. Okay, you just understand.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. Mind if I move your?
Oh, good. I'll just take it.
Literally, it's like 80% almost sent, and then the bar's not moving at all.
Yeah, it's not. It's like it's not real.
I'm not necessarily web to
I was not over it.
Come on.
No cute little. No, not this time. There's already one of those up there.
Let's try
You
this
get one cute picture per tournament.
Yeah, I can't for some reason upload this doc.
I thought we sent it on my computer.
Huh? Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, my computer can't upload anything. Let me like.
Oh,
it,
like you can't even save it to Dropbox.
I can't
Yeah.
use Dropbox.
And you can't use USB.
I can't use USB. Let's try this again. I'm gonna just get off Wi-Fi.
For everybody watching the stream,
Waiting where that.
remember the days we had tunnels?
Actually, probably all the people watching the stream don't. To be perfectly honest.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. That.
People haven't-
remember we had tubs of them.
Oh, I thought you were saying remember when people used tubs.
Like they were really inconvenient for a lot of other reasons, like flying. But
But this.
But this didn't happen.
Sent.
all
Okay.
right,
Wow.
MVP.
That was pretty fast.
Technology. You got mail.
I haven't kicked off the internet yet, so I don't know.
Is this the right one? Hopefully I sent out the right one.
You didn't send out the right one. Oh no.
Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 3, right? That should get done. Okay, 3 off in case.
Okay, let's.
Okay, everyone good?
No,
No.
Oh, my bad.
it's not down.
I mean,
Oh,
he did,
no.
but
Starting down.
Is that allowed? Can we
Okay.
stream the?
You good?
Can we stream
Yep.
this from the bar?
We'll still make a decision.
Okay.
First off is topicality. The affirmative defend the desirability of domestic climate policy, including at least substantial increase restriction on private sector emissions in the United States, and climate policy mandates to decrease emissions to 111. Climate policy may reduce emissions from land use, agriculture, reduce emissions for fossil fuel combustion, reduce demand from energy-intensive goods, improving energy efficiency, switching attack with to reduce fewer emissions, and substantial increase in restriction and emissions restrictions must cover at least 22% of emissions. DuBois 13 results presented from Australian national legislation to mitigate climate. This data is distinguished in its focus national policies and objective metrics. There's been a substantial increase in climate legislation, 67% of emissions now under climate legislation compared to 45%. The increase is significant and restrict means the limitation not can be exceeded. Black Line Dictionary nor day restriction limitation not can be exceeded. And there are 8 greenhouse gases. This is UN Global Compact 13. GHGs including carbon, N2O, methane, and ozone. And our interpretation has made a style of debate type of evidence or active for the app as long as the end goal is the substantial decrease in emissions. And debate is a game of its benefits comes to the process of debate rather than the product of debate. Your ballot endorses competing visions of debate. Now whether the one sees good or bad in himself. We have 2 impacts versus procedural fairness. Debate is a game only functions at a predictable point of stasis grounded in the resolutions. That's how we do prep. And that's important since debates are won by inches, not by miles. There's a number of things that can happen outside the resolutions, so it's impossibly negative. And there's no predictable clash apps in our interpretation. Steinberg and Freely 13. Debates means of settling differences. There must be a good conflict of interest before there can be debate. If everyone's in agreement, there's no opportunity to debate. Thus, to be pointless debate. Resolve that 2 + 2 = 4 because there's no controversy with the statement. Generally, may occur about illegal immigration is likely not to be productively useful without focus on political question identification line, demarcating scientific understandings, results in focused deliberation for decisions. When a vote or consequential decision is called for, it's essential that the opposition be explicitly expressed. An active debate proposition provides essential guidance for preparation debaters prior to the debate, focusing to the better and more informed decision making is potential for better results. If we're really talking about topics such as crime, we're likely not to establish a profitable basis for argument. The point is that debate is thus facilitated by the guidance provided by focusing on people who point to difference. And 2 is ground. It's ground. They eliminate core counterplan ground, making it possible for the negative to counterplan with less restrictive market measures. The determination with us instead of cap on them. Our interpretation requires the app to make a large scale change to the status quo. Best for disad ground. Now the oil disad. Prices are rebounding towards $70, jumpstarting Gulf economies and desertification. Arab time 17. Oil prices recovered near $60 per barrel levels of realistic success. Oil hit $70 in the near term. The price recovery has resulted in bridging a deficit in the Gulf countries. As Saudi Arabia takes steps to diversify, Saudi Arabia projected a narrow budget. Increased oil prices may imply less fiscal headways. Go through the big up from 2018 onwards, and strong post-Harris commitment from the U.S. drives oil prices down. Hedge 115. Impact on oil depends on government's policies to constrain oil demand. Oil prices are unlikely to move on oil. News from Paris since there's no lever to reduce demand. Oversized drowning on signals. Breakthrough can dramatically disrupt demand. Weaker demand as the national cap. Long-term prices relation increase production costs. Chemical action widens risk in energy. And the price collapse causes Putin to lash out nuclear war. Thompson 15 a nuclear arsenal. They're entering Russians think that attacks are possible and that their nuclear deterrent might have to be launched quickly to escape a preemptive strike. Collapsing economy. Putin's popularity is traceable to the Soviet economy. That growth has been based on oil would weaken Putin's support, but because he can believe others economic troubles accelerate authoritarian rule. Putin has built his base by appealing to nationalism. Putin has created a constituency for standing up to outsiders, even if it means war. America faces little danger from Russia's current troubles. Moscow thinks it can improve its tactical situation by threatening local use of nukes. The crisis escalates. Now 3 is the invitation pick. We affirm the unnatural cut. They affirm the invitation of the unnatural cut. That's an invitational rhetoric that disciplines and risks civilizing the unnatural cut. Whatever your intention, as people accept the invitation, they believe they are entering a space of shared meaning and understanding. But that process and dialogue are always controlled by people in power. Those most willing to dominate and naturalize will always control those conversations. Thus, we should affirm the unnatural cut. Lorenzo, Reich, and Cloud, and 9. Invitational proposals of equality. Such conditions are rare. Invitational rhetoric has been a form of discipline. We can call for uncivil tongue to challenge oppressive discourse. Invitational rhetoric is opposed to violence and hostility in response to power. We should be cautious about invitational paradigm. To refuse persuasion, to refuse participation, real world encounters marked by material and antagonistic interests. Universalist, liberal, humanist that grounds. Invitational rhetoric assumes shared interests. No powerful, rarely willing to invite those less powerful in the dialogue. Invitation belongs to those who set the rules for exclusion. Invitational risk, profound elitism, and invitational rhetoric exists in opposition to persuasion, dissent. Foss and Griffin, 95. Invitational rhetoric, a constant invitation to the audience to enter the rhetoric's world. The invitational rhetoric is open to and tries and appreciates and validates those perspectives, even if they differ dramatically from the rhetoric or so. Rhetoric rhetorics a view of choice that's selected by audience members as right for them, and deliberation dissent are a battle model for environmental policy discussions, key to navigating competing needs and interests. Peterson et al. 5, the attempt to placate the risk of any attenuation of any impetus for change. We achieve the illusion of objectivity and universal reasoning by bracketing out or masking conflicts among participation groups and individuals. This is critical to a nation's political welfare. The absence of such a debate, existing hierarchies are uncontested, and on policy is not producing anything remotely sustainable will not occur unless the current power infrastructure can be challenged, not approached. Public participation grounding the argument offers a useful alternative. Ecosystem management cannot wait for some hypothetical future where the policy is sufficiently disciplined to yield a traditionally rational agreement. A decision-making model that emphasizes the organization provides the practical means for involving the public in environmental policy. The perspective grounding our arguments offers a realistic means of negotiating the politics of opposing identities and interests that confront one another in environmental policy with deliberation, accepting the existence of incompatible aspiration among members of an active democracy should foster an interdisciplinary conversation about systemic approaches developing scientifically informed and socially legitimate environmental policy. Now the case. Utilitarian comes first, minimize death. This is Kaminsky 96. We must not sacrifice individuals from overall good by emphasizing solely one mistake or the cost we fail. If we act, we fail to take account of the other sources. Each with only one life will barely bear the cost of our action. The solution to such a dilemma involves maximally promoting the lives of liberties, mitigating as possible. Constraints require a non-value-based rationale. Persons have dignity that transcend any value. Only one may have to sacrifice some to save many, and living guarantees value of life. Cacao and 8. Pleasure can always be pictured immediate. All awareness is pleasurable, and all consciousness is good. Pleasure is the core extent of expression of goodness. Life something that valuable, attainable, and pleasure itself a priori logical reason to take the foundation for security. Our life, the good, a pleasure can be found only living the life that continuously in pursuit of the light. At least for the sake of preserving the possibility of finding that good, and there's no root cause, sharp intent. Political life is more complex than ideologically duped fools staring at a wall. The illusions proponents are probably the way of their son of Western philosophy of the time. So until there's a kind of everything, we've shown the hope that one method to decipher complexity. Now, the narration turn expositions of cuts and scars, position the storyteller as an autonomous subject, celebrate its ability to narrate the world and ideal individualism. That subject forms the foundation of Western liberalism that makes their impacts inevitable. Conflict 95, the autonomous individual concern that has been of good use in the systematic conquest of the universe. Autobiographical performance to celebrate the Western ideal of individualism and places the self at the center of the world, precisely because it appeals to readers' fascination with a totemic individual, privileged by liberal theories of risk-sided autobiographical discourses co-opted. It's meant for reforms envisioned by outsiders, even where the autobiographer can self-consciously determine to resist liberal ideology, relentless individualism, subordinates political critique. The autobiographer who desires material benefit from performance as a doubt persona that intelligible to her audience narrates capitalized on rather than subvert the values of liberalism, and the absolvencies like the underpants gnomes doesn't exist except the imagination isolated academics. Bryant. In 12, the academic left falls prey to his own abstraction. Critiques that denounce social formations that very poor at proposing alternatives. I remind you of underpants gnomes in South Park. Phase 1, radical critique. Phase 2, question mark. Phase 3, complete transformation. We give our talks at conference attending with academics who denounce other navigation question. We don't want to vilify them for what they don't embrace the talks we endorse.